Why is it so hard for other companies to compete with PSA? What keeps this ever-expanding behemoth on top? Today I'm going to break down some reasons no one seems to be talking about, so stay tuned to the end. PSA dominates the graded card market, owning roughly 72 to 79% of market share in 2025. Their parent company, Collectors, now controls about 79 to 80% of the market after acquiring SGC in 2024 and Beckett in 2025. For years, PSA has been the top dog, while other grading companies have struggled to seriously challenge them. In my last video, I even showed with actual data how inconsistent PSA's grading is, and yet their expansion seems unstoppable. So why is that? Before we dive into why PSA dominates the grading market, it helps to understand the general pecking order that collectors and the market assign to grades. From most elite to more common, it usually looks something like this. BGS Black Label 10 at the top. BGS Pristine 10 and CGC Pristine 10 are roughly equivalent in the market's eyes. Then you have PSA 10. And finally, CGC 10 and PSA 9 are about the same, with CGC 10 sometimes carrying a premium over PSA 9s and sometimes not. Tag 10 sits somewhere around PSA 10, often considered more consistent and sometimes slightly stronger than a PSA 10 to the right circle of collectors. So if BGS, CGC, and even Tag can carry more elite status than a PSA 10, why is PSA still the dominant grader? That's exactly what we'll break down in the next sections. Most people assume that PSA earned its top spot by being the most trustworthy grader, that their dominance comes from perfect consistency and the confidence their slabs bring. The reality is more complicated. I believe PSA's dominance actually comes from three key factors. Number one is the profiteering potential. The upside from PSA grading isn't just in the number on the slab. There's a reason high volume submitters keep sending cards back in. Number two is the emotional appeal and market scale. PSA 10 is widely recognized and has a prestige that competitors struggle to match, even if other grades are technically more elite. Number three is the market utility. PSA slabs make buying, selling, and comparing cards simpler than anything else currently available. We'll break down each of these points in the next few sections, showing why I think PSA has such a strong edge over their competitors like CGC, Beckett, Tag, SGC, and so on. For years, collectors have known that you can crack a PSA slab, resubmit the raw card, and get a completely different grade. But here's the twist. That inaccuracy isn't a flaw, it's actually a feature. Most of us assume consistency is what makes a PSA slab valuable. A trustworthy, repeatable grade is supposed to be the draw. But in reality, the trading card market is made off of a sort of gambling. Not exactly slots or poker, but variance with expected value, or EV. And that variance, it can work in favor of volume submitters. The expected value of a PSA submission depends on four factors. One is gem rate, usually a percentage of cards graded 10. Number two is the price difference between a 10 and a 9. Number three is the submission cost, and number four is the scale, how many cards you send. Let's break it down with a concrete example. Let's say I submit 100 identical cards, split into 5 submissions of 20 cards each. For simplicity, every card costs $30 raw plus $20 to grade. PSA 9s sell for $30, PSA 10s sell for $150. Here's how the submissions come back. Submission 1 receives a 100% gem rate, Submission 2, 75% gem rate, Submission 3, 65%, 4, 40%, and finally Submission 5 receives a 20% gem rate. Now let's look at the math behind each one. Only narrate the gem rate and the overall profit, but you can check the screen for a table of the full numbers. Submission 1 with its 100% gem rate yielded a $2,000 profit. Submission 2 with the 75% gem rate, a $1,400 profit. Submission 3 with the 65%, $1,160. Submission 4 with the 40%, $560. And even the worst submission, Submission 5 with the 20% gem rate, still made $80. Of course, all of this is before seller fees and shipping. Across all 100 cards, the total cost to purchase and grade all of these was $5,000. The total revenue, $10,200. Total profit was $5,200. Pretty wild, right? The big takeaway here is that the high margin PSA 10s completely outweigh the losses from the PSA 9s. Even when your gem rate is low, sending in at volume can be profitable. This is why PSA grading isn't just about getting a fair, accurate grade. The system itself works as a money-making engine. The upside of a 10 is so large that you don't even need to win often. You just need to win occasionally and at scale. Now, the math is one thing, but maybe more importantly is the psychological effect. Humans remember the big wins far more than the small losses. If you're a solid pre-grader sending in 100 cards, even a mediocre return often pays off because the wins outweigh the losses. And when you hit a great return, a string of 10s, it feels amazing. You feel like you're a genius, like you cracked the code. Even for collectors submitting just for fun, the effect is just as real. I often send in about 20 to 30 cards, sell roughly 2/3, including a mix of 10s and 9s, and it usually pays for the other third that I want to keep in my collection. It's addictive. For inexperienced pre-graders, the effect is just as strong. The wins feel huge compared to the misses. Think about it like this. No one talks about losing $5,000 on their annual trip to Vegas every year for 7 years, but they will tell you about that one time they hit the jackpot and won $15,000, even if over the long term they're still down. That's exactly what happens when you submit to PSA, even if you lose. So we've discussed the monetary and gambling hook of PSA, but that can't be the only reason that they dominate the market, right? What is it about their grading that actually beats the competition? If you recall at the beginning of the video, I gave an approximate pecking order for gem mint grades among the most popular grading companies. You might have been surprised to see the PSA 10 closer to the bottom, since PSA dominates the market so strongly. But this actually taps into a delicate psychological balance for collectors and investors in the TCG space. First off, people love seeing 10 on the label. It makes you feel like you own something elite, better than a run-of-the-mill copy. But for that 10 to matter, it has to be meaningful. If a 10 is too easy to get, the card loses desirability. On the other hand, if a gem mint grade is too hard to achieve, it can create an entirely different set of problems. These problems create negative effects both for collectors and the market. When a top grade becomes extremely rare, most collectors stop feeling like they can realistically participate. It starts to feel less like a hobby and more like an exclusive club, reserved for the super wealthy or the longtime veterans who already own the best copies. On top of that, low population cards tend to get hoarded, which drives prices even higher and pushes average collectors and even many speculators completely out of the market. That lack of participation has a real impact on the hobby's growth. While it may sound appealing to get rid of speculators entirely, the reality is they play a huge role in keeping the market active. Their buying and selling helps fund the hobby, keeps prices moving, and supports the Pokémon company's continued creation of these incredible cards with immersive artwork created by exceptional artists. When the hobby grows, everyone benefits, at least in the long term. From a market perspective, grades that are too difficult to get create a different set of problems. When very few cards reach the top grade, there are fewer submissions and fewer transactions, which limits overall supply. That lack of liquidity leads to increased price volatility and instability, something that turns off many investors who generally prefer higher population cards with more predictable pricing and long-term steady growth. Extremely hard top grades also discourage volume submitters and grading focused businesses from participating, even though these groups actually play a major role in keeping the market healthy. They help increase the flow of graded cards, establish pricing benchmarks, and bring consistency to the marketplace. When they step back, the entire ecosystem slows down. Here's the key takeaway. For a card to hit that sweet spot of desirability, the top grade has to be elite enough to feel special, but achievable enough to keep collectors engaged, speculators active, and the market liquid and healthy. PSA has historically hit that balance in a way that very few competitors have. So where do PSA's top competitors get it wrong? Let's start with Beckett, a company with a history 12 years longer than PSA's. Many collectors praise Beckett for their consistency, strictness, and transparency through subgrading for centering, surface, corners, and edges. Beckett has 3 gem mint levels, the 9.5, Pristine 10, and Black Label 10. The Black Label 10 is the elite of the elite, reserved for cards that score 10 on all 4 subgrades. The Pristine 10 is still exceptional, requiring 3 10s and only 1 9.5. The 9.5 grade is a bit more complex. Beckett seems to average the subgrades, but they don't allow any individual subgrade to be below 9. If your head is spinning, you're already sensing Beckett's first problem. Their gem mint scale is simply too complicated for the average collector. Hardcore collectors may value the added transparency, but for most buyers, the scale works against them. And even though casual collectors recognize how elite a Black Label 10 is, or even a Pristine 10 is, these grades are simply too hard to achieve, which circles back to the point we made earlier. A top grade needs to be attainable to feel relevant. And the BGS 9.5 doesn't carry the same prestige as a 10. So collectors often gravitate towards PSA, where the same quality card can earn a full 10 on the label. CGC actually faced a similar issue with this and their 9.5. In July 2023, they eliminated the 9.5 entirely and upgraded all existing 9.5s to 10s. Technically, there's still a 9.5 called a Mint Plus, but no longer a Gem Mint 9.5. The whole thing is super confusing. The problem is everyone knows that many of these 10s are really 9.5s. When comparing CGC 10s to PSA 10s, the PSA card often feels stronger. CGC still maintains a Pristine 10 as their top grade, roughly equivalent to Beckett's Pristine 10, but it's extremely rare. Most CGC 10s end up weaker than PSA 10s, and the scarcity issues we discussed earlier still applies for their Pristine 10. And here's the psychological benefit for PSA. The fact that PSA doesn't have a grade higher than 10 actually benefits collectors. Even a lower quality PSA 10 sits in the same case as the top quality ones. On paper, when showing off a collection, every PSA 10 feels elite, giving collectors a psychological win that their card is at the top of the ladder, even if the underlying quality varies. I'll admit though that all of this does mean that some of the focus I feel is put on the wrong thing in the hobby. Many of us, myself included, become obsessed with chasing the 10 on the label. PSA offers just enough difficulty and prestige to hook us while still being accessible enough to engage us. And yet when I really step back and think about it, I like Beckett's scale better, or even tags. Both offer more transparency and more data on what you're buying. As a hobby, we should probably care more about the card itself than the number on the slab. But here's the tension, and this is where PSA quietly wins again. Grading was never just about perfection. It was about making the hobby easier to navigate. To really understand PSA's advantage, we need to zoom out and talk about the value of grading itself, not just PSA. There's a type of value that third-party grading provides that almost no one talks about. Most debates around grading revolve around whether slabs ruin the hobby or whether chasing 10s is good or bad, but grading isn't just about assigning a number. It's about search efficiency. If you've ever spent time scrolling through eBay listings listed near mint, or asked a local card shop employee to pull out 30 different cards only to leave having purchased one because that's the only one that met your standards, you already understand the problem. Condition in the raw card world is subjective, inconsistent, and frankly, exhausting. I can't tell you how many eBay listings I've seen marked near mint that were really light play, or marked light play that were really more moderate play. And this matters because condition directly affects price. As a buyer, you want to feel confident that you're paying the right amount for the right condition. But sorting through listings to find that takes time and effort. Two things most people don't want to spend. And on top of that, some listings just have poor quality pictures or not enough pictures to really get a good idea of what the card is actually like. This is where third-party grading becomes incredibly powerful. When I'm on eBay, instead of searching for base set Charizard light play and filtering through dozens of subjective listings, you can search base set Charizard PSA 6 and instantly see a group of cards that are all roughly the same condition verified by a third party. That one change turns a frustrating process into a simple one. And while this seems like it only benefits buyers, it helps sellers just as much. Standardized grading increases liquidity. It makes transactions faster and easier because buyers and sellers can quickly agree on condition. It effectively turns an infinite scale of condition into 10 discrete bins or grades to choose from. It also lowers the barrier of entry to newer sellers or low feedback sellers. When a card is encapsulated and guaranteed by a trusted grading company, buyers feel far more comfortable purchasing even from someone with no reputation. Even platforms like TCG Player, where I myself sell raw singles, highlight this issue. They provide a detailed conditioning guide, yet the results you receive can vary wildly between sellers. And for collectors who care deeply about condition, near mint often isn't good enough. PSA alone breaks that range into 4 grades, 7, 8, 9, and 10, which makes it incredibly appealing for condition-conscious buyers. Add in the fact that graded cards are sealed and protected, and buyers gain confidence that the card they purchase will stay in that condition. So if grading provides this value across the board, why does PSA benefit more than anyone else? The answer is scale. Because PSA has the largest population of slabs, it's simply easier to find the card you're looking for. There's more sales data, clearer pricing, and more confidence in market price. That creates a compounding effect. People use PSA because it's easiest to use PSA, and that drives even more growth back into PSA, and you can see it's this vicious cycle. There's one final factor behind PSA's dominance that's easy to overlook: convenience. Over the years, PSA has continually invested in building a complete ecosystem around grading. When I sent my first submissions back in 2014, the process involved requesting paper forms in the mail, filling them out by hand, and mailing everything physically. Compare that to today. Now PSA offers an intuitive website and mobile app for submissions, population reports, and order tracking. On top of that, features like the PSA Vault and PSA Offers make it easier than ever to sell cards, unlock liquidity, and reinvest capital, all without leaving their ecosystem. No other grading company comes close to this level of integration, and that matters. The easier it is to submit, store, sell, and reinvest, the more likely people are to keep using the same platform. PSA didn't just build a grading company, they built infrastructure, and that infrastructure quietly reinforces their dominance every step of the way. Hopefully this video helped show that PSA's dominance isn't about one single factor. It's a combination of psychology, market dynamics, search efficiency, scale, and convenience, all reinforcing each other in ways that are extremely hard to disrupt. In the next video, I'm going to talk more personally about where I'm at as a collector, how these realizations, along with my previous experiment on PSA grading and consistencies, have actually shifted my mindset around grading and what I value in this hobby. If you haven't seen that first video where I ran my own PSA experiment, I'll link it in the description below. The results genuinely surprised me. If you enjoyed this breakdown, consider hitting that like button and subscribing. It really helps the channel out. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Did I miss any major factors behind PSA's dominance? And which grading company is your favorite and why? Thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Add in the fact that grilled. If you haven't seen that first example, I'll consider hitting that subscribe button. Oh, excuse me.